This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. So we're learning Sefer Nechemia, Parak Yud, Pasuk, Lamed Gimel. And we're discussing the Shtar Amana, the Bris Amana, that the Jewish people signed the covenant, they signed the treaty with God, that they would commit ourselves to keep the Torah, to keep the mitzvahs, and to fulfill even things that they were not technically, biblically obligated to fulfill. This is called the Bris Amana. And in Pasuk Lamed Gimel, we find that one of the things that they accepted, Parak Yud, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, V'he'emadnu aleinu mitzvahs, we established upon ourselves mitzvahs, laseis aleinu, to place on us, Shlishis HaShekel Bashana, a third of a shekel a year, La'avodas Beis Elokeinu, to the avodah of the house of God, which the Gemara says means, Gemara Masechta Bava Basra Daf Cheson Beis says, this is a remez, how much tzedakah has to be given every year. How much tzedakah does have to be given every year, and it's Paskin in Yordea, Simin Reish Mem Tes, that minimum you need to give a third of a shekel a year for tzedakah. That means even if nobody solicits your donation, you have to go out of your way to give a third of a shekel. However, obviously, when there are needy people, then there are halachas of meiser, chomesh, etc. Okay, so this is one of the things the Jewish people accepted upon themselves in the Bris Amana. And what are they going to donate this shlish hashekel for? Now that's very interesting that it was a third of a shekel, because usually in the Chumash, in the Torah, we find machzas hashekel. So says Rabbi, Roi sheteda hashekel hazel yoyser gadol me'hashekel haniskar b'Torah. It was more valuable. Not inflation. Good economy, strong economy. Okay, so instead of having to give a half of a shekel, they only had to give a third of a shekel. Now, it sounds like from the Rabbi, this is in lieu of the machzas hashekel. The Ibn Ezra says, Noisef al machzas hashekel. In addition to the machzas hashekel, so they were required to give an additional third of a shekel. Okay, so now the Pasuk Lamed Dalet, what did the money go for? Lelechem hamareches, it went for the lechem hapanim. Uminchas hatamid, it went for the carbon mincha of the tamid offering. Ula oilas hatamid, and for the carbon oila of the tamid. Hashabasos, for the Shabbos offerings, Hechadashim, for the Rosh Chodesh offerings, Lamayadim, for the Yamim Tovim offerings, the Lakadashim, and the holy items. Now, what are the holy items? It says in Metzudas David, Hem Kivsei Atzara Shem Shalmei Tzibur. This referred to the sheep of Shavuos, which were carbon shlamim of the Tzibur. It says in Metzudas David.
Would you like some water?
How does that differ from
I'm okay. Thanks.
How does this differ from Malagid?
Well, because this is not specifically a carbon for every Yom Tif. It's only referring to the kvasim of Atzeres, which were shlamim. The Ma'alim says it's referring to the Oimer and the Shtei Halechem as well. V'lachatois. Carbon chatois, the Malbim says, of the Seirim of Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tovim, l'chaper al Yisrael, to atone for the Jewish people, v'choil meleches beis Elokeinu, and all the work that was needed for the house of God. Now, the Gemara Masechta Taanis tells us that when the Jewish people returned, it was determined that there was not enough wood to offer on the Mizbeach. They couldn't find wood in the Lishkas Ha'etzim. So now they have a dilemma. What are they going to do? How are they going to supply wood? So the Gemara Masechta Taanis at the end of the Masechta says certain families took it upon themselves to donate on designated days, on 9 days, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, on Chaf Tammuz, on 5 different days in Av, Hey, Zayin, Yud, Tesvav, Chaf, and Chaf Elul, and Rosh Chodesh Teves. These were the families enumerated in the Masechta Ta'anis, and this is what this pasuk is going to tell us about. That they made lots who would donate wood on those designated days, and the families that offered to do so were zoicha that in the future their families were the ones who always brought wood on those days. So they cast lots al korban ha'etzim for the offering of wood, hakohanim for kohanim, halavim for Levim to bring, v'ha'am lahavi lebeis Elokeinu to bring to the house of our God, lebeis Aviseinu to the house of our fathers, li'itim mizumanim at designated times, shana b'shana every year, levayer al mizvach Hashem Elokeinu that the wood should burn as fuel on the altar, kakasav Torah, like it says in the Torah. Now, a very interesting expression we have here that the Beis Hamikdash is referred to as Beis Avoseinu, the house of our fathers. How is it the house of our fathers? I mean, they were the ones who built it.
One of those shifts.
So Rashi says, Shehi Beis Kedushas Avoseinu. The sanctity of the house had the sanctity of the Kedusha of our forefathers. Now that would seem to be going according to the Shita of the Rambam. That when the Kedusha of the Mikdash is eternal Kedusha, and from the time the Beis Hamikdash was built, that Kedusha never ceased, because the Kedusha of the Mikdash is Kedusha Hashchina, and Shchina loy b'teila. However, according to the opinion of the Ravid says that even if you want to say Kedusha Rishayna, Kidsha L'Shaita, V'Kidsha L'Asad Lavai, that does not refer to Kedusha HaMikdash. Kedusha HaMikdash is not L'Asad Lavai. The Ravid says by Bayis Rishon they knew that even by Bayis Sheni they knew that there would be another Beis Hamikdash, and therefore they only sanctified it temporarily. So would we say then that the Beis Hamikdash is Beis Avoseinu? It's Beis Kedushas Avoseinu? Not Beis Kedushas Avoseinu. Once you're out, once the Avoseinu are no longer there, their Kedusha also ceased. There's an amazing Ramban. The Ramban in some editions it's the last Ramban in Sefer Bereshis, and in some editions it's the introduction to Sefer Shemais. The Ramban wants to know, we know Sefer Bereshis is called Sefer HaYetzirah, the book of creation. Sefer Shemais is called, well, the Bahag calls it Sefer Sheni, and the Ramban says it's Sefer HaGeula. Why Sefer HaGeula? Well, the Jewish people had been in exile, and Parsha Shemais Va'ira Boi B'Shalach talks about Geula. What about Truma, Tetzaveh, Kisisa, Vayakov, Kudeh? That doesn't talk about Geula. Says Ramban, we're not considered Geulim until the Mishkan is built. Why? Because the Avos HaKadoshim in their tent were Zoicha that Shechina was there, and the Mishkan and Har Sinai was only the purpose of Har Sinai? To capture the Shechina that rested on the houses of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the Mishkan was the Ramban says Soid Eloika Alei Oihaleim, that the Mishkan was merely to capture the Shechina that was in the homes of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So that could also be what it's referring to here, that the Beis Hamikdash is called Beis Avoseinu, the house of our fathers. How? Because the purpose of the Beis Hamikdash is to capture the Shechina that existed in the tents of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay. Pasuk Lamed Vav. Ulahavi es bikurei ad masenu. To bring, they're going to bring bikurim. They bring bikurim. How nice of them. Of course you have to bring bikurim. Stoiraisa. Not so fast. Not if you say Kitcha Rishayna, Kitcha L'Shaita, V'loi Kitcha L'Asalavai. If Eretz Yisrael no longer has Kedusha, then their acceptance of the mitzvah of Bikurim is above and beyond the letter of the law. They're accepting upon themselves something they're not required to do. So that would fit in well with the idea that this is a brisa amana, that they're sealing a covenant to agree to do things that they're technically exempt from. Now, what's the difference between bikure ad masenu and bikure uvikure kol pri kol eitz shana? Why does it say bikurim twice? Well, Rashi seems to learn like this. Do you have to give bikurim on apples? No, not everyone at once. One at a time. Do you have to take bikurim on apples?
No, absolutely not.
Well, you're right. Midaraisa, you don't have to. Very good. You don't. According to Torah, you don't have to. Right? It says meirishis priho adama. Only the peros that shenishtabcha eretz Yisrael. However, midrabanan, you give bikurim on all fruits. So the first pasuk, the first expression, bikure ad masenu, that could be referring to bikure da'iraisa, referring to the bikurim of the Shivas Aminim. And then bikure ubikure kol pri kol eitz shana, Rashi says all trees which are midrabanan. The Rabbi learns, no, bikure ad masenu, that refers to bikurim not of fruits, but of other things that grow from the ground. You know, you have to give bikurim from wheat and barley as well. So that's the first expression, bikure ad masenu. And then the second expression will be bikure kol pri kol eitz, that refers to bikurim of of fruit of the Shivas Aminim, lebeis Hashem. Pasuk Lamed Zayin.
Isn't chitos are a part of the Shiur Minim?
Yes, it is. Very good.
So why is it separate?
Because wheat and barley, do they grow on trees?
No, I understand that.
So, and do pomegranates grow on trees?
That's too, I think.
So that's why we have two expressions. One is the bikurim of the Shivas Aminim that grow from the ground, like chita and saira, and one, the Shivas Aminim that grow on trees.
What's left of it?
Right. V'yes b'chayros banenu, and the firstborn of our children, uvehemtenu, and our animals, kakas v'tar, we will bring b'chayrim. V'yes b'chayrei v'karenu, and the b'chayros of our cattle, v'tzaynenu, and sheep, lahavi leveis elekenu, to bring to the house of our God, la kohanim, for the kohanim hamisharsim leveis elekenu, that serve in the house of our God. V'yes reishis arisoisenu, and the first of our kneading bowls. What does that refer to? Chala min ha'isa, good. U'truma isenu, and truma, u'pri kol eitz. And, in other words, the reishis, the truma of fruits, tirosh, wine, v'yitzar, and oil, navi la kohanim, will bring to the priests, to the kohanim, lishchois beis elokenu, to the chambers of the Beis HaMikdash. U'maser ad masenu, and the tithes of our land, la Levim, go to Levim. Any Levim here? Not yet? Okay, let me know. Vehem haLevim, they are the Levites, hama'asrim b'chol orei avoidasenu, that are meisered in all the cities of our service. In other words, these Levim take off meiser in all the cities of our service. Well, now, what is that supposed to mean? What does it mean? V'heim haLevim hama'asrim b'chol orei avoidasenu.
Isn't that Master Minanas there?
Says Rashi, Shenoid l'masasem b'chol orei Yisrael. See, the Kohanim, they're found in the Beis HaMikdash, so we're going to have to bring it to them to the Beis HaMikdash. The Levim are in all the cities, and they go around collecting their meiser from all the cities. Why does it mention B'chol orei avoidasenu, in all the cities of our work? What's the point of that? What's the point of B'chol orei ad masenu? The Malbim just clarifies over here that these psukim fit very well in with the Shita of the Rambam. In the times of Ezra, they were not chayiv in chala, and Chumash and Maisros, only Midrabanan. So therefore, whatever they were makabel on themselves, they were makabel divrei chachamim. But according to the Rabbi, that Truma was Midairaisa, Chala was Midrabanan, you have to say they were makabel Truma of other fruits, because the Rabbi Shita is that what's only chayiv in Chumash and Maisros are Dagan, Tirosh, and Yitzhar. Okay. V'haya ha-koyin, and it was the koyin ben Aaron, the son of Aaron, im halavim, with the Levim, baser halavim, when the meiser of the Levim. What does that mean? What do you mean the kohanim were with the Levim, with the meiser? What's that supposed to mean? Well, if you remember Yavamas and Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis, what does the Gemara say there? That when Ezra came up to Eretz Yisrael, he said, like what I just said a few minutes ago, any Levim over here? There were no Levim. No one came back. So what did Ezra do? He penalized the Levim, and he said, you used to get Meiser. Sorry pals, no more Meiser for you. The Meiser now goes to the Kohen. Actually, Tosfos brings down over there, we mentioned this many times, right? That the only Levim that he found there were the Levim that bit off their thumbs 70 years earlier. Those Levim who, when Nebuchadnezzar said, Shiur lanu mishir Tzion, the Levim that said, Eich noshir ashir Hashem al admas nechar. Recently, a great person told me, when commenting on the state of Jewish music today, that he thinks that when the Jewish people went into Galus after the Churban Bayis Rishon, when the Levium said Eich Nashir Shir Hashem Al Admas Nechar, how could we sing? At that moment, that music also went into Galus. Jewish music also went into Galus. Anyway, that was the theory. I'll tell you who said it after the shir. Okay. So the Gemara in Yevamos Peivam says a Malbim. This pasuk is talking about these times that the Levim were penalized, that the Kohanim get Meiser also. That the pasuk is saying Kohanim could also take Meiser. And everybody knows that when you give a Levi Meiser, the Levi in turn has to give Meiser Mina Meiser, right? To the Kohen, he has to take off a percent to the Kohen. The Levim bring up the Meiser of Meiser to the house of God. Levim are bringing up the Meiser to the house of God. El halashachos to the chambers. El leveis ha'itzer to the house, the storehouses. Rashi says, Shahayu alvi ma'aser meiser min ha-meiser, and they would bring it to the Kohanim. Because the Kohanim, the Levim could go collect these handouts, the government program, but the Kohanim were not allowed to. The Kohanim had to stay in the Beis Hamikdash. So all these gifts had to be brought to the Kohanim. Ki el halashachos, because to the chambers, Yaviu v'nei Yisrael, the Bnei Yisrael would bring uvnei halevi, and the Bnei Levi would bring es chumas hadagan, the chuma on grain, hatirosh, wine, yitzar, and the yitzar and oil, v'sham klei hamikdash. There in the Beis Hamikdash you had the kelim, v'hakohanim hamisharsim, and the kohanim who served, v'hashayarim, and the gatekeepers, v'hamashayurim, and the singers, v'loi nazai v'speis alekenu, and we will not forsake the house of our God. What does that mean? We will not forsake the house of our God. Says the Metzudas. What does it mean? V'loi nazai, l'man loi nazai v'speis Hashem. In order, it was brought to them so they would not have to leave. Kim hayu ha'kohanim redufim l'shoyted achar truma. If the kohanim would have to run after the truma, hayim kein habayis nezameim v'loi gazru lahavi aleim.
I thought Kohanim, they had a certain shift during the year, and they would travel to do that shift. It seems to say that they didn't. They stayed there all the time.
Okay. So what? Who says why couldn't they give it to the other Kohanim? I mean, only one mishmar is serving that week. Well, what would Kohanim do the rest of the time? Apparently, they were Yoru Mishpatach Al Yaakov. They were teaching. Okay, I hear it's good hara. Okay, Parak Yud Aleph. Vayeshvu Sarei Ha'am B'Yerushalayim. The officers, the nobles, they settled in Yerushalayim. Now, what is that? Why only the officers? So let me ask you a question. And the question is, what's better? Is it better to live in a big city, or is it better to live in a suburb? Is it better to live in Kew Garden Hills, or is it better to live in, out on the island? All other factors being equal, what's better? What's better life? Well, the Navi holds it's not good to live in a big city. Why? It's too cramped. Real estate is too expensive. You can't breathe. There's no air. Yeah, you're masking. It's too crowded. Too crowded. That's why people come to the kollel, because they know in the kollel it's not going to be crowded. Yeah. But besides for that, but once you leave the kollel, then all of a sudden all the other things are very crowded. So now the people have already been accurately lineaged, and they were makabel on themselves to observe the Torah. Who's going to settle Yerushalayim? Who is going to settle Yerushalayim? After all, Yerushalayim is a big city. It's crowded. Real estate is expensive. In fact, the halacha is l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa. If you are living in a small city, and you tell your wife, we're moving to the big city, the Gemara in Ketubah says, you can't force her to go. She could say, I'm staying here in the suburbia. It's better life. Cheaper real estate. More air. Nicer gardens. That's halacha, and it's brought down in the Gemara in Ketubah. It's halacha in Shulchan Aruch. So, the question is, what?
We talking about repopulation here?
Well, now they wanted to settle Yerushalayim. Now, Yerushalayim at the time was in ruins, and we're talking about settling an area. Yerushalayim is objectively a big city, so it's something that was not desirable to the people, and it was not affordable. It was expensive real estate. And therefore, the nobles were the only ones who were able to settle Yerushalayim, and they made up a system of a lottery. 1 out of every 10 people would have to go back to Yerushalayim. Okay? Vayeshru Sarei Ha'am B'Yerushalayim. The officers lived in Yerushalayim. The Shar Ha'am, and for the rest of the people, Yipilu Gairolos, they cast lots. Lahavi Echad Min Ha'asara, to bring 1 out of 10. Lasheves B'Yerushalayim, to settle in Yerushalayim. Ir HaKodesh. V'seisha Hayados Be'arim, and 9/10 they would settle in the cities. Vayevarchu Ha'am, the nation blessed. L'chol ha'anoshim ha'misnadvim, anyone who volunteered l'shavas b'Yerushalayim.
Maybe it's the other way around. They had the Sarim were basically subsidized the houses of people who won the ladders.
Oh, I don't know if is that what it means? It doesn't say they offer them any financial aid. In other words, right? No. It's like any person who voluntarily would move to Yerushalayim received the bracha from the people. The people acknowledged that this was an act of great sacrifice. So that's what it means. In other words, you see from here that it was difficult to return to Yerushalayim, and anyone who did so voluntarily received the bracha from the tzibur.
These volunteers says that. These volunteers, in addition to the ones who
is it besides?
Or did they come out of that quota?
I think it's in addition, right? I think the 1 out of 10 didn't have much of a choice.
Shavas B'Yerushalayim says that the Shamram no masks.
Where are you?
So you started. Avi and Moshe's Rishalayim.
You mean no churches, a mosque? Is that Avodah Zarah?
Well, there were no mosques that time because Islam hadn't been started. Islam didn't start until the 6th century.
There was no Arab here.
No, they're Arab. There were no Muslims. There were no mosques. There were no Muslims. Islam didn't start yet.
They worshipped the dust of their legs.
They were pagans, but they weren't.
Okay, so pagan is worse now than a Muslim.
Okay. Now we're going to give a list of the people who settled Yerushalayim. And this list is somewhat similar to a list given in Sefer Devrei Hayamim, but as different as, remember we already had two lists as well. We already had a list in Ezra and Perek Beis and Nechemia Perek Zayin of the people who returned, and we saw their minor discrepancies that the Rashi and the Malbim pointed out. But the lists between Nechemia and Devrei Hayamim are completely different. And that also the Mefarshim have to deal with addressing the major fundamental differences between the list of Nechemia and the list in Devrei Hayamim.
The count those chads.
Yeah. Ve'ela Rashi HaMedina. These are the heads of the country. Asher Yashru Yerushalayim, that settled in Yerushalayim. Uva'arei Yehuda. And in the cities of Yehuda, Yashvu Ishbach Luzasa Be'areim. Each man settled in his ancestral land, in their cities. Yisrael, HaKohanim, HaLeviim, HaNesinim, Uvnei Avdei Shloimoi. Uv'Yushalayim. Yashvu Mibnei Yehuda. They dwelled from the sons of Yehuda, Mibnei Binyamin. Mibnei Yehuda Asaya ben Uzziah ben Zechariah ben Amaria ben Shefatya ben Mahalalel Mibnei Paretz. Mibnei Faretz. From the sons of Faretz. Why is it Faretz and not Paretz? What happened to the dot? Who took the missing dot? The answer is, whenever you have a Beged Kefes letter, anytime you have a letter that's supposed to have a dot in it, if it's preceded by a vowel, aleph, hey, or a yud, then it causes the next letter to drop the dot. You know that rule?
No.
Now you know it, that whenever you have...
Hard and fast, but there's some exceptions to that rule.
It's hard and fast, as long as there's no trop, which is a melech on the preceding word, which would separate between the two words, so then... and also other exceptions. But besides them, it's a hard and fast rule every single time. In the Shira, me?
One's with the that, one's with the that.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. Uma'aseya ben Baruch ben Kol Chayzeh ben Chazaya ben Adaya ben Yayariv ben Zechariah ben Hashiloini. So Ma'aseya, the son of Baruch, the son of Kol Chayzeh, the son of Chazaya, right? That's why Ben Chazaya, Ven Adaya, it's Ven, right? Because there's a Hey before. Ven Yayariv, because there's a Hey before. Ben Zechariah, there's no vowel before. Ben Hashiloini. Kol B'nei Feretz. You see Feretz drops the dot. Hayoshim B'Shalayim. Arba Meis, 400. Shishim Ushmaina Anshe Chayal. 468 men of valor.
Has to be the letter of the previous word?
Yeah.
The previous word.
Or it could be in the same word.
So what happened to Hashiloni?
Where?
Ben Hashiloni, what do you have there? You have it, Dogesh and Yishin, no?
Which?
First one, Ben Zechariah, Ben Hashiloni. Dogesh there and Yishin?
Oh. The shin is not a beged kefes letter. It's Beis Gimel Daled, Kaf Peites. Those are letters that the Dagesh changes the pronunciation, right? Right. Okay. Kol b'nei Feretz, Hayoshim Yishayim, Arba Me'ez Shishim Shona Anshecha. Ve'ela b'nei Binyamin. These are the children of Binyamin. Salu, ben Meshulam, ben Yoyed, ben Pedaya, ben Kailaya, ben Maaseya, ben Isiel, ben Yeshaya. Right? In other words, excuse me, right? This is not one person, the son of, who's the son of a son of. These are the sons of, right? The son of Zechariah, the son of another. We're only, and Rashi points out, we're only enumerating the important ones, the chashuv ones. The Achar of Gabai, Saloi, Tishameos Esem Ushmaina, 928. V'Yoyal ben Zichri, Pakid Aleim, Yoyal ben Zichri was appointed over them. V'Yehuda ben Hasanua, Al Ha'ir, Mishnah. And Yehuda ben Hasanua was on the city, Mishnah. What does that mean? Mishnah? He was the Mishnah Lamach, he was the assistant. Okay? Rabbi said, we'll hold it over.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.